शाम बखैर और द ब्लैक होल में आप सबको खुश आमदीद। पाकिस्तान को जिन बड़े मसाइल का सामना है उनमें एक तवानाई का बहरान भी है, और ये वो मसला है जिससे हमारी मुईशत के पहिए की रवानी जुड़ी है। एक हल इसका जो आमतौर पे सामने आता है वो ये है कि हम फॉसल फ्यूल से मुंतकिल हो जाएं काबिल तजदीद तवानाई या रीन्यूएबल एनर्जी की तरफ। क्या पाकिस्तान में इसका पोटेंशियल है? जी यकीनन है, और वी हैव गुड रीज़न टू बी कॉशियसली ऑप्टिमिस्टिक अबाउट इट। लेकिन देर इज़ अ होस्ट ऑफ अनरिजॉल्व्ड इश्यूज़ जो हमें कन्फ्रंट करते हैं। वो इश्यूज़ क्या हैं, उनका सामना कैसे किया जाए, उनके मुमकिन हल क्या हैं वगैरह, यही आज हमारी गुफ्तगू का मौजू है। रीन्यूएबल एनर्जी, द गुड, द बैड एंड द अननोन। वी आर वेरी ग्रेटफुल टू आवर गेस्ट स्पीकर। हमारे साथ हैं आज डॉक्टर आशा अमीर अली। शी इज़ अ पोस्ट डॉक्टरल फेलो एट द Center for Development Studies at the University of Bath. She is a political sociologist whose work has focused on understanding the operation of power and politics in Pakistan's informal economy. Her current research explores the intersection of state, market, and informal institutions in energy transitions with a focus on Pakistan. तो आज हमें इस मसले को इसकी गहराई में समझने में और मुमकिना हल को जानने में मदद मिलेगी। आप सब लोगों की आमद का शुक्रिया। थोड़ी सी ज़हमत कीजिए, अपने सेल फोन जो है वो साइलेंट मोड में स्विच कर लें ताकि किसी किस्म की डिस्ट्रैक्शन ना हो। गुफ्तगू के बाद आप जानते हैं यहाँ का कल्चर कि आप लोगों को भी मौका मिलता है इस मुकालमे, इस गुफ्तगू में शरीक होने का। जब हाउस ओपन हो फॉर Q&A, अपना हाथ बुलंद कीजिएगा ताकि आपको ये माइक्रोफोन दे दिया जाए। फिर आप अपना सवाल रखिएगा, शॉर्ट और टू द पॉइंट रहिएगा ताकि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा दोस्त जो हैं वो इस गुफ्तगू में शरीक हो सकें। एंड दैट्स इट। नाउ प्लीज़ वेलकम डॉक्टर आशा अमीर अली।
ओके, थैंक यू। ठीक है। शुक्रिया नैयर तारुफ का, शुक्रिया दोस्तों का आने का आज। मैं ये गुफ्तगू उर्दू में नहीं कर पाऊँगी, क्योंकि मेरी उर्दू उतनी सलीस और मतलब खुली नहीं है कि मैं ये जो कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सियासी, मुआशी, समाजी मसाइल हैं उन पर मैं खुल कर बात कर सकूं। तो लेकिन ये बस शुरुआत में बंदा कुछ कर जाता है। हाँ, नहीं तो सवाल ये पैदा होता है कि अगर अंग्रेज़ी में बोलूँ तो दिक्कत महसूस होगी लोगों को। मैं ज़रा मिक्स करूँ या कैसे करूँ? मिक्स कर दूँ? ठीक है, चलें, मैं कोशिश करूँगी। तो ठीक है। यहाँ पर बैठे हुए मुझे यहाँ पर बैठे नहीं, कल जब मैंने टॉक वगैरह की तैयारी थोड़ी सी की तो मुझे अंदाज़ा हुआ कि मैंने टॉक का टाइटल थोड़ा गलत रख दिया है, क्योंकि मैं रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी की बात नहीं कर रही हूँ। मैं स्पेसिफ़िकली इलेक्ट्रिसिटी की बात कर रही हूँ, बिजली की बात कर रही हूँ। रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी तो इससे बहुत बड़ा मामला है, उसमें बहुत सारी चीज़ें आ जाती हैं। लेकिन आज हमारी बात इलेक्ट्रिसिटी पर होगी, और यकीनन आप सब जो हैं बिजली के माहिर हैं, क्योंकि बिजली पाकिस्तान में बहुत हॉट टॉपिक है आजकल। और मुझको एक कोट 1970s का लेबर एक्टिविस्ट था, लेकिन उसकी बातें अभी भी काफ़ी सर्कुलेट होती हैं। उसने कहा था कि ही वाज एन अमेरिकन लेबर एक्टिविस्ट, and he said that there should have been a revolution by now in America, because the most radical piece of literature reaches every American home every month, and it's called the utility bill, the electricity bill. And Pakistan में ये बात तो और भी ज़्यादा दुरुस्त है, सही है, क्योंकि यहाँ पर बिजली के बिल आप मुझसे बेहतर जानते होंगे जो यहाँ पे रहते हैं, लेकिन मेरे अंदाज़े से तो पिछले 3 साल में बिजली की कीमत तकरीबन 2.5 गुना बढ़ चुकी है। तो लेकिन कोई इंकलाब नहीं आया है, तो इट्स नॉट एज सिंपल एज दैट। हाँ, अफोर्ड कर रहे हैं या नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो ये बात करेंगे इस पर। तो मैं आज ये करूँगी कि आपको थोड़ी सी एक ग्लोबल पिक्चर दूंगी शुरू में about how electricity consumption, electricity production is shifting. और फिर उसके बाद हम फिर पाकिस्तान के बिजली के सेक्टर पर आएंगे. मैंने कोई स्लाइड्स नहीं बनाए माजरत से, लेकिन आई होप कि मैं बात लंबी नहीं करूँगी, फिर खोल दूँगी, फिर जब हम बात करेंगे तो उसमें और चीज़ें आ जाएंगी. हाँ, तो ठीक है. मेरे ख्याल से बात हम इससे शुरू करते हैं कि जस्ट स्टेपिंग बैक अ लिटिल बिट कि बिजली है क्या. बिजली ये चीज़ जो हम हर रोज़ इस्तेमाल करते हैं, ये है क्या. अब डिपेंडिंग कि हम किस से ये बात पूछें या करें, मुख्तलिफ जवाब मिलेंगे. अब यहाँ पर मुझे पता है 2 तो कम अज़ कम साइंसदान बैठे हैं, फिज़िसिस्ट बैठे हैं, तो अगर हम उनसे पूछें कि बिजली क्या है तो शायद वो हमको ये, एक्चुअली मैं आपसे पूछ ही लेती हूँ, बिजली क्या है. व्हाट इज़ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी?
जो आसमान से गिरती है.
Right. Anybody else?
A necessity, I believe, right now.
A necessity, right. I mean, sorry? Flowing current. All of these things, starting from what falls from the sky to flowing current to necessity. Absolutely, I don't know if scientists would necessarily say it's a necessity, but and any economists in the room? Current affairs. Oh. No, an economist normally thinks of electricity as a factor of production, right? कि आपको ये ज़रूरत होता है ताकि आप मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कर सकें, ताकि आप चीज़ें बना सकें और फिर उनको आप बेच सकें और फिर आप पैसा बना सकें उससे, राइट. यहाँ पर कोई सोशियोलॉजिस्ट अगर हों तो वो शायद एक और जवाब दें, और वो ऐसा जवाब है मेरे ख्याल से जो हम कम सोचते हैं, या कम अज़ कम जो लोग आम तौर पर बिजली के मामलात में इन्वॉल्व होते हैं वो इस तरह से कम सोचते हैं. एंड दैट्स टू थिंक ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी as a social relation. So as a relationship between people. Because if we think about it a little bit, and we just take grid electricity, for example, right? We won't think about the solarization that's going on, but grid electricity, which we all know very well. Usme, to simplify it, आपके कुछ लोग होते हैं, कुछ firms होती हैं, groups होते हैं जो कि बिजली बनाते हैं, और कुछ ऐसे लोग होते हैं जो कि हम बाकी लोग हैं जो कि वो बिजली ख़रीदते हैं और इस्तेमाल करते हैं. हमारी आपस में मुलाकात तो नहीं होती अक्सर, लेकिन we are quite intimately connected, right? There is a relationship between the producers of electricity and the consumers of electricity, and that relationship is represented by many different things. So it's represented most obviously by prices. Right? It's represented by the regulations that get put on production and on consumption, by subsidies, by taxes, the regulation of efficiencies and things like that. Because ultimately this is a relationship of the balance, this is a balance of power. वो कोशिश करेंगे कि वो कीमत बढ़ाएं, हम कोशिश करेंगे कि हम कीमत घटाएं, वो कोशिश करेंगे कि बिजली इस तरीक़े से पैदा हो कि उसके जो एनवायरमेंटल इफ़ेक्ट्स हैं वो एक्सटर्नलाइज हों, उनको पैसे ना देने पड़े उनके. हम और ख़ास तौर पर वो लोग जो उसके करीब रहते हैं वो चाहेंगे कि ऐसे ना हो. तो that's what I mean by a social relation, that it's not just a technical thing, it's not just an economic thing, but it's also a deeply political thing, because it's about that balance of power between different groups of people. And actually, as I'm saying this, there's one fourth way of looking at it, which I haven't mentioned, which is how an ecologist would perhaps does it make sense to say ecologist? How an ecologist would conceive of it, which is that electricity is also a tool or a means by which we interact with the human and non-human environment and effect changes on our material, physical surroundings. क्योंकि ये बड़ी powerful चीज़ है और इसको हमने इस्तेमाल करना सीख लिया है. तो so this is what it is that I'm talking about. So it's, in a sense, it's no different than, this bottle of water or oranges or pens, right? All commodities are this. They are social relations. कोई बनाता है, कोई उसको consume करता है, उनकी आपस में मुलाकात नहीं होती है, लेकिन वो आपस में जुड़े हुए हैं, and those terms, the power political terms of that relationship are always shifting depending on the collective power of both groups. I hope this makes sense. So now to come to, I want to talk a little bit about what's changing globally about electricity production and consumption. And on this, I think that three things stand out. The first is that electricity demand, electricity consumption is growing very, very rapidly. And it's likely to continue doing so. This is not rocket science, I think we all know this, but there are two big reasons for this. दो बड़ी वजूहात हैं. एक वजह तो ये है, मेरे ख्याल से हम सब इसको जानते हैं. आज मैं बहुत सी जो बातें करूँगी, मेरे ख्याल से अक्सर हम उन बातों को पहले से समझते होंगे, लेकिन उनको जोड़ना जो है ना, कभी कभार उससे एक नई स्टोरी बनती है, एक नई तस्वीर सामने आती है. तो एक बड़ी वजह ये है कि जो बड़े ममालिक हैं बाय पॉपुलेशन, अब आप चाइना को ले लें, आप इंडिया को ले लें, मिलाकर इनकी पॉपुलेशन इज़ अबाउट, मतलब a quarter of the world's population, right? Indonesia ले लें. These are all countries that are some of the few countries in this current global state of affairs that are experiencing strong economic growth, what we call economic growth, right? And they're also the most populous countries. So, it stands to reason that electricity demand is going up in the world. The numbers are pretty big. Last year, India's demand grew by 8%. And when you think of the size of their economy, that's a lot. आप चाइना को देख लें, 6% उनकी पिछले साल कंजम्पशन बढ़ी है. तो ये हो रहा है एक. दूसरा ये हो रहा है कि जिस भी वजह से एक फैसला किया गया है, primarily amongst the European and American, sort of the advanced capitalist countries, decision makers, that the solution to the climate crisis, the main solution that we are going to roll out is to electrify everything. Right? We have an emissions problem, so what we're going to do is electrify everything. Now, I don't necessarily think, I'm not going to talk about why this is a good decision or a bad decision. In fact, I don't think I even have enough information to assess this fully. But as a result of that, there's increasing demand for electricity. You can see this in the rollout of EVs, electric vehicles, heat pumps, etc. And so electricity is becoming more central to every economy that is now, following this path towards net zero and decarbonization. The second thing that's changing about electricity generation is that the quantum of electricity being produced by renewables is growing, and it's growing really fast, right? That कि जो बिजली पैदा हो रही है ज़्यादा बड़ी तादाद में, उसके अंदर जो कोटा है of renewable energy, वो बहुत तेज़ी से बढ़ रहा है. Solar or wind जो हैं, these are the fastest growing technologies ever in history. It took, there's lots of statistics that abound about this. आप ये इंटरनेशनल एनर्जी एजेंसी की कोई भी रिपोर्ट उठा के देख लें, आयरीना की रिपोर्ट्स देख लें, वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम की रिपोर्ट्स देख लें, उसमें आपको बस स्टैटिस्टिक अपॉन स्टैटिस्टिक मिलेगा कि जी कितनी तेज़ी से ये ग्रोथ हो रही है, और वाकई में हो रही है. There's 100 terawatt hours to go from 100 terawatt hours to 1,000 terawatt hours. It took gas and coal approximately 40 years. Solar, it took, 6 or 7 years? And wind, it took something like 8 years. So the curve is really steep right now. and you'll hear that, you know, wind and solar have gone from 0.2% of the energy supply, electricity supply, to something like 14% now. So that's a huge jump because we're talking a big quantum. So I mean, this is a good thing. Okay, by 2050, by 2030, it's expected that 50% of all electricity generated in the world is going to be from renewable sources. उसमें से 20% हिस्सा जो है वो hydropower का है और 30% wind and solar का है. Again, this is a big accomplishment. I think there are two problems with this. And the first is that despite the rapidity of this growth, it's not fast enough to keep us from, and this is not me saying this, I'm not a climate scientist, but those who are climate scientists and who understand how these things interact, they are convinced that this is simply not fast enough. The pace needs to be 3 to 4 times higher to keep us within even the 2-degree limit, जो कि IPCC, जो आप सब जानते हैं कि एक दर्जा हरारत अगर 2% बढ़ती है तो then, you know, there are certain scenarios, लेकिन अगर हम कुछ नहीं करते हैं तो 8% बढ़ जाएगी by 2100, or life as we know it is, well, it's going to come to an end, right? It'll be very different. So it's fairly obvious to say while it's fast, it's not fast enough. And the second thing that's really interesting that I didn't know until I started digging into this is that this growth, this remarkable growth, is concentrated in one part of the world, which is China. So in 2021, 2022 and 2023, and I haven't looked at the figures for 2024, लेकिन इन 3 सालों में चीन ने खुद अकेले उतनी सोलर पीवी कैपेसिटी इंस्टॉल की जो कि बाकी दुनिया से ज़्यादा थी. So if you look at the maps, again, if I'd made some slides, then you would be able to see very clearly what this looks like. So it's a very heavily concentrated increase that's taking place, and I think the explanations for why this great geographical difference exists are also very interesting, and I'll come to those later. Maybe we'll talk about them in the Q&A or something. So this was the second thing. The third thing that jumps out when we look at the big picture is something much less pleasant, which is that fossil fuels are still growing. Fossil fuel consumption is still growing. ठीक है, पिछले साल जो है coal production 1% बढ़ी है, oil production बढ़ी है, और इसका मतलब ये है, I mean, आप अगर figures देखें तो $280 billion profit is what the 5 largest oil companies reported last year. And जहाँ पर मैं रहती हूँ इंग्लैंड में, वहाँ पर जो पिछली हुकूमत थी कंजर्वेटिव पार्टी की, उन्होंने literally 200-300 licenses, hundreds of licenses they issued for new drilling in the North Sea. अब ये जो गवर्नमेंट आई है ये कहती है कि भाई हम बहुत ग्रीन गवर्नमेंट हैं और हम नेट ज़ीरो की तरफ बहुत तेज़ी से जा रहे हैं, लेकिन इन्होंने ये जो आई हैं जो पुराने जो लाइसेंसेस इशू हुए थे उनको कैंसिल उन्होंने नहीं किया है. सो there's going to be new drilling. Coal, I mean, oil is not really used in electricity production anymore. That has stopped even in Pakistan largely because of how expensive it is. But what is used in electricity production, because remember, we're talking about electricity, we're not talking about anything else, is coal. India, आप में से कुछ लोग जानते होंगे, उसकी बहुत बहुत भारी reliance है कोल पर. इंडोनेशिया की है, साउथ अफ्रीका की है. साउथ अफ्रीका का 85% जो बिजली पैदा होती है वो कोल से होती है. इंडिया इज़ सिमिलर, थोड़ा सा कम है. इंडोनेशिया 65-70% है. अगेन these are big countries, and it's coal is obviously a source of very big carbon emissions. अब हम भी unfortunately 2015 के बाद अच्छा 2015 से पहले पाकिस्तान में कोई कोयला नहीं जलाया जाता था तकरीबन for electricity production, लेकिन 2015 के बाद हमने धड़ाधड़ जो कोल प्लांट्स लगाए हैं सीपेक के तहत, अब हमारी तकरीबन 14% बिजली जो जनरेट होती है इस मुल्क में वो कोल से आती है. तो हम हम भी उस पटरी पर अब चल पड़े हैं. तो what I want to get across from this is something that, again, I don't know how much you know, how much you don't, how you think about it. To me, it now seems very obvious, but I wonder if that's just because I've been spending a lot of time with this stuff. But this whole idea that there is an energy transition underway is not true. It's not happening. There is no energy transition underway at the moment. What is happening when you line up the numbers and you look at the quantum of different types of electricity that is being produced, what's happening is that renewables are growing rapidly, absolutely, but they are supplementing a growing energy demand. As I outlined, energy demand is growing. It's growing faster than GDP growth. Global GDP growth. So we are supplementing rather than substituting for intensely problematic carbon-emitting electricity generation. Obviously, this is a disastrous scenario with disastrous consequences. And, you know, I didn't bring the book with me today, but it's a book that I'm reading now. It's a very good book. आपको कभी मौका मिले तो आप उस किताब को देखिएगा. ये एक जियोग्राफर है, उसका नाम है ब्रेट क्रिस्टोफर्स. अभी इसी साल उसकी एक किताब आई है. It's called The Price is Wrong. And it's all about, it's very sort of technical, but it's very well written, and it's all about the cost structure of renewable energy. और उसकी argument, अगर मैं बिल्कुल simplify करूं, तो उसकी argument ये है कि इसके बावजूद, basically कि अगर हम renewable energy ko, you know, if we think of it as that it's an economic problem. क्योंकि we've been thinking of this, it's an economic problem. हमको बताया जाता है कि जी, you know, जब average cost of production per watt जो है ना वो गिर जाएगा, we need to get technologies, we need to develop them to the point where the cost per unit of production is lower than the cost of coal or oil or gas. Then मार्केट को आप दे दें और मार्केट ले भागेगी और सारे मामले हल हो जाएंगे, right? Because ultimately when costs are lower, you can expect that is where the money will flow. And what he says is, actually this is not working out like that. And then he explains why. And his argument is not about costs, it's about profitability. In that, I think he's a good Marxist, because that is what obviously Marx also, you know, pinned his whole thesis to, okay, the profit motive is the motor force of capitalism, and we live in a capitalist society. लेकिन उसका कहने का मतलब ये है कि renewables का जो cost structure है, वो fossil fuel cost structure से बहुत फ़र्क है, और again इस पर हम बाद में बात कर सकते हैं क्योंकि ये है दिलचस्प. अब now, this brings me to the fourth and final point on this, and I'll be quicker, which is that as renewable energy technologies are spreading insufficiently fast, or however you want to think about it, they are shaking up the social relations of society. वो जो हमने बात शुरू में की थी कि जी electricity is actually a relationship between people. Okay, but we also have other folks here who, I think we had this I think you came in late, but we had this conversation, I checked in with the audience, and the audience said, could you mix it up? Is that okay for you?
For me it's okay, maybe for my friend. For me, I understand Urdu and English both, but he understands.
Okay, I think we'll be all right when we mix, yeah. So, yes, so the fourth point is that, you know, at thinking about it at a global sort of aggregate level, that the social relations of society are also shifting now. And how are renewables shifting the social relations of society? This is the big question. This is the question that I don't have an answer to, and nobody has an answer to at the moment, because it's happening now, it's happening fast, it's only been a little bit of time. But this is where historians become useful, because historians have to be useful at some point, right? ये क्या बात है कि बस आप पीछे की माजी को आप देखते जाओ, उधर की कहानियाँ बताते जाएं. उसका मकसद ये होता है कि वो आपको आपके मौजूदा हालात और आइंदा वक्त के बारे में थोड़ा सा आपको समझ दें. So there's a historian named Timothy Mitchell, who, again, maybe some of you will have heard of. But he's written a really interesting book, a really fascinating account of the shift from coal to oil that took place, and in the early part of the 20th century. And his argument is that the move from coal to oil was driven not by cost, but by politics, actually. And basically, he argues that coal made mass democracy possible, and oil put a stop to that. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about what his thesis is. उनका कहना ये कि जब 20वीं सदी में 19वीं सदी में जब तेल दरियाफ्त हुआ था अमेरिका में, तो उस वक्त ये बहुत ही it shifted the class relations of the world, actually, in a sense, because coal enabled the materiality of coal is such. A materiality मैं किस तरह से समझाऊं? उसकी जो फिजिकल प्रॉपर्टीज़ होती हैं, वो अगर आप कोयले को देखें तो कोयले का एक पीस होता है, लंप होता है, वो एक काफ़ी ठोस चीज़ होती है. वो आता कहाँ से? You have to dig it up from the ground. Who digs it up from the ground? People dig it up from the ground. Lots of people are involved in digging up the coal, bringing it to the surface, right? वो जो आपके माइनर्स होते हैं वो नीचे काम करते हैं, outside, away from supervision. अक्सर आप तारीख़ी तौर पर देखें तो the coal miners lived close to the mines, so that they could access, and their families lived there too. Then once the coal came out of the ground, वो कैसे पहुंचता था जहाँ पर उसको जाना होता था? कैसे पहुंचता था? ट्रेन से पहुंचता था. और वो ट्रेन किस चीज़ पर चलती है? वो पटरी पे चलती है, और वो पटरी जो है वो फिक्स्ड होती है in space. Coal travels on railways. Railways travel on tracks. Tracks are fixed in space, and there's a lot of people involved. So you can imagine, right? I don't think I have to spell this out. लेकिन होता ये है कि हुआ ये तो तारीख़ी एक fact है कि coal miners unions, dock workers unions, railway unions, they had their heyday in the 20th century and in the late 19th century. क्योंकि जब उनको लगता था कि भाई हमारे साथ हमें जो terms दिए जा रहे हैं वो ठीक नहीं है, तो उनके पास ये ऑप्शन होता था कि they could disrupt the supply of energy. इधर हड़ताल कर दी, उधर रोक दिया. लेकिन जब तेल डिस्कवर हुआ तो कुछ चीज़ें तब्दील हुई, because तेल जो है, oil comes from the under the ground to the surface, not through extensive human labor, but kind of on the force of its own pressure. And then, of course, you can, employ machinery to help you bring it up, as they do. It doesn't travel on fixed tracks. It travels through pipelines, which can be routed in any way that you want. It travels on tankers, which go overseas. So it's neither labor intensive in that way, nor is it open to disruption. And very importantly, एक चीज़ और, ये उनकी कहानी है, this is his analysis, it's very compelling, that it also enabled that a kind of break between the producers of oil and the consumers of oil, precisely because of how easy it was to transport it all over the globe. So तेल एक जगह produce हो रहा है और consume कहीं और हो रहा है, and you can imagine that really shifts. It creates a very different set of alignments, right? When the users of coal are also the producers of coal, or at least they inhabit the same social universe in some respects, you can expect a different set of alignments. So this is the story of the shift from coal to oil. And then if you go further back in history and you look at the shift from from water to steam, or from water to coal, so again you see that this is not so much driven by cost. It was driven, and this is a book, again a very good book called Fossil Capital by a human ecologist who is a very passionate and I think an incredibly informed advocate for keeping fossil fuels in the ground and for working against climate change. His name is Andreas Malm, and uski kitab called Fossil Capital, usme wo ye kehte hain कि that it was not cost, instead it was the need to break the power of the spinners and the weavers. जो कि textile industry में अभी ये जो analysis is located in the UK, जब industrial revolution शुरू में मतलब वहाँ पर textile mills लग रही थी, yarn बन रहा था, fabrics बन रहे थे. These used to be located close to the waterways because it was the water wheels that used to power the power looms, the hand looms. But that gave, again, these were isolated places and villages and small towns rather than the big urban centers. So labor had a lot more power there. But the switch to coal enabled industry to move from there into the big urban agglomerations and broke basically burgeoning class power and ultimately led to profits. But it wasn't that it was cheaper. In fact, in his book, you see again and again and again the industrialists complaining about the fact that coal was just too expensive to use, and it took a long time for coal to replace water. So why am I telling you this? Well, because I think that there is something similar that is happening here. I mean, I don't know if the story is a story of labor. I don't know. I can't see that right now. This is a very different transition. This is a transition that is actively being driven by an existential necessity. हमें ये पता है, या कम से कम हम में से बहुत सारों को ये पता है कि अगर हम ये जो कार्बन एमिशंस हैं इस पर हम काबू नहीं करते हैं तो यहाँ पे सीन डेथ होने वाला है soon. हाँ, हमारा नहीं होगा तो हमारे बच्चों का होगा और उनके बच्चों का तो लाजमी हो जाएगा. So there's an intentionality to it that didn't exist before. I think some things are definitely changing. When we talk about changing social relations, and some things you can see them. For example, the politics of land. Land is already एक बहुत ही contested चीज़ है, उस पर काफ़ी struggle होती है, लेकिन as you know, solar or wind, दोनों, they require large amounts of land. And we're already seeing this the world over, especially in countries like the United States and Europe, जहाँ पर ये अब काफ़ी solar PV और wind technologies, onshore wind, offshore की अलग बात है, लेकिन onshore wind जहाँ पर develop हुई है तो land पर काफ़ी अब एकदम से refocus आया है. And it's यहाँ पर भी आएगा, I think. And of course, with renewable energies comes battery technology, right? We need batteries in order to be able to store all of that wonderful energy that is being generated. But what comes with batteries is mining. And mining is deeply ecologically destructive. I confess to driving a electric vehicle where I live. And my electric vehicle has a 64 kilowatt hour battery. It probably weighs something like 500, 600 kilograms, which is heavy. Imagine 500, 600 kilograms inserted into a car. But what that means is the 500, 600 kilograms that's in there, it takes about, I had to look this up because I was like, I need to know what I am doing to the earth by driving this car. And it took a lot of sort of looking around. But somewhere between 240 and 280 approximately tons of ore have had to be processed to produce that, to manufacture that one 64 kilowatt hour battery. Imagine that on a scale. हमको ये बताया जाता है कि जी हर बंदे के पास EV हो सकती है, and फिर we'll be in happy everland where we transition from dirty energy to clean energy and everything will be fine. We can't do that. There's just not enough. You need 20 planets to be able to do something like that. So, can you, Nair, can you tell me how much time I have? I know, but I mean, वो मुझे अंदाज़ा देना मेरे पास 15 मिनट हैं, 20 मिनट हैं, आधा घंटा है, 5 मिनट हैं, मतलब, oh gosh, चलें आप लोग तो you're in trouble now. Okay, no, I won't take that long. So just as a final point on this section then, the rise of distributed generation, which is something that is really it's a new thing. It's, as I mentioned, I didn't mention it earlier, I think, when talking about the social relations of electricity. लेकिन आम तौर पर तो बिजली जो historically जो बनी है, distribute हुई है, transmit हुई है, it's been a very centralized system, right? अब सोलर और विंड की जो टेक्नोलॉजीज़ आई हैं, अब इसको हम डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड जनरेशन इसलिए कहते हैं क्योंकि आपको ये ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आपके बहुत बड़े बड़े प्लांट कुछ थोड़े से लगे हुए हों, फिर उनकी बिजली ट्रांसमिट हो रही हो बिटवीन ऑल द प्लेसेस दैट इट्स नीडेड. अब तो ये हो सकता है ना, जैसे कि हम सबको मालूम है जो सोलराइजेशन हो रही है, हर बंदा अपने छत पर लगा ले कोई पैनल, और तो इसको हम डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड जनरेशन कहते हैं. अब ये डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड जनरेशन आ रही है, ये जाहिर सी बात है, इसकी जो ये जिस तरीके से ये जो सोशल रिलेशन जिसको मैं कह रही हूँ, जिस तरीके से ये इस पावर बैलेंस को, इस पॉलिटिकल पावर बैलेंस को शिफ्ट करेगी, ये तो मेरे ख्याल से एक बहुत ड्रास्टिक शिफ्ट्स मुमकिन हैं कि ये हो, अगर ये स्केल पर अपटेक हो. वी डोंट नो अभी कि ये इसके असरात होंगे क्या, क्योंकि अभी ये इतनी नई चीज़ है, ये अभी आई है, ये अभी लग रही है. पाकिस्तान में तो अभी आई है, लेकिन बाकी दुनिया में ठीक है 10 साल हो गए होंगे, 15 साल हो गए हैं तकरीबन. दैट्स नॉट लॉन्ग इनफ टू नो, स्पेशली एट स्केल. सो maybe this is actually a good segue into talking about what's happening in Pakistan, actually, because Pakistan में जो solarization हो रही है वो तो off the page है, in a sense. This is actually the country with the most rapid uptake of solar PV in the world after China at the moment. We're not, we are making headlines. In the energy world, the energy heads, जब वो मिलकर आजकल बातचीत चल रहे हैं, मुझको बहुत, lots of people have gotten in touch with me कि जी आप पाकिस्तान पे काम करती हैं, what is going on there? तो अब मैं कहती हूँ कि यार मुझे नहीं पता, I've just started working on, I'm just starting. But one thing is obvious, is that there is now a huge, so 2020 से आज तक तकरीबन 24 से लेके 27 गीगावाट इम्पोर्ट पैनल्स हो चुके हैं, which is, just to put in perspective, more than half of the grid installed capacity. जो पूरे मुल्क की grid installed capacity है, कोई कहता है कि 44,000 है, कोई कहता है 46,000 है, लेकिन ठीक है आप 46,000 का फिगर ले लें, but the total wattage of the panels that's been imported capacity wise is more than half of that. Now that's a huge number. इसका थोड़ा सा हिस्सा नेट मीटरिंग के ज़रिए ग्रिड के साथ लग गया है, लेकिन ये कोई बहुत बड़ा हिस्सा नहीं है. ये तकरीबन 2500 मेगावाट हो गया इस साल नेपरा की रिपोर्ट के मुताबिक. तो 2500 46,000 is what, like 5%, something like that. So it's a small number. So the question is, ये बाकी किधर जा रहा है? Where's the rest going? And people who have an eye on this are saying, well, there's 3 places it's going. One is industry, one is agricultural, tube wells primarily, and the third is sort of residential solar PV, जो कि हम देखते हैं, जो हम we see everywhere. Some of these installations are substituting for private diesel generation, जैसे कि जो आपके tube wells हो गए, या आपके captive power plants जो कि industry ने लगाए हुए हैं, तो वो grid को उस तरह से affect नहीं करते हैं, right? But the grid is being affected. अब आप सब अखबार पढ़ते हैं, आप सब को पता है कि कहानी क्या है, you know, electricity sector की. I think many of you do, simply if you just read the newspaper these days, because it's being talked about so much. But last year, NEPRA reported a 12% reduction in demand on the grid. 12% in 1 year. The year before that, it was 10%. We're talking a huge dip for a small electricity production system. So but this is, electricity demand is also rising in this country. It's just not accounted for in the statistics. क्योंकि आपकी population growth भी हो रही है, urbanization भी आपकी तेज़ी से चल रही है. आप इस्लामाबाद को देखें, आप बड़े शहरों को देखें, लोग आ रहे हैं. मिडिल क्लास आपकी यहाँ पर हम बहुत सुनते हैं, और बात भी सही है, आपको उसके भी असरात नज़र आते हैं कि पाकिस्तान की मिडिल क्लास भी काफ़ी थ्राइव कर रही है, इसके बावजूद कि गरीब पिस रहा है, लेकिन मिडिल क्लास भी बढ़ रही है और मिडिल क्लास की कंजम्पशन बढ़ रही है. तो बिजली की डिमांड डेफिनेटली इंक्रीज़ हो रही है. तो ये बात नहीं है कि डिमांड डिक्रीज़ हो रही है. जो सबसे बड़े ग्रिड पर असर करते हैं, द बिगेस्ट इम्पैक्ट इज़ दैट ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल consumers, obviously, because they are in the megawatts rather than in the kilowatts. So when industry goes off grid, that's what is causing this big drop. Okay, well, that's the biggest contributor to this drop, but there are many contributors to this drop. Again, we all know that the drop in demand on the grid is problematic. Why is it problematic? It's making it more expensive, and there's a reason for that, right? It wouldn't make it more expensive if the largest part of the price we pay per unit was a fuel cost. Because if that electricity isn't being generated, then we don't have to pay for it. But we are unfortunately in a situation जहाँ पर हमारे ऊपर, जिसको हम capacity charges कहते हैं, वो मुसल्लत किए गए हैं. उसका मतलब ये है कि चाहे बिजली पैदा की जाए या ना की जाए, उसके बावजूद एक फिक्स्ड कॉस्ट पे करना है उन IPPs को जिनके साथ ये 25-30 साल के माहदे हो गए हैं, जिनको हम पावर परचेस एग्रीमेंट्स कहते हैं. तो अब हमारे इलेक्ट्रिसिटी सेक्टर में we work on power purchase agreements. It's not like this everywhere in the world. You have different market structures, spot markets, clearing markets, but इस हम जहाँ पर हैं, यहाँ पर लॉन्ग टर्म पावर परचेस एग्रीमेंट्स के तहत बिजली जनरेट होती है. तो और इस and what this means is that the rich are able to get off the grid, those who can afford it, and those who are left on it are those who can't afford to get off it. Obviously, this is an unacceptable state of affairs. Obviously, this is a big problem, and I wish I could tell you sitting here that I had an easy solution to this, but I don't think there is an easy solution to this. And by now you'll have guessed that I think that the solution is not a technical solution. The solution is a political solution. We'll come to that in a minute. I think we need to dig into, or at least what I'm interested in doing, what my research is, part of what I'm doing now. I'm starting to ask the question of why is it that electricity generation here is so expensive? Why is the electricity that we are producing so expensive? And again, I think this is a story that, and I've just started exploring, so for me this is an emerging story. I think part of the answer is one that many of you are already familiar with, which is, I think, वही वाली बात, आप अखबार पढ़ते हैं तो आपको पता होगा कि it's a well-rehearsed story of bad decision making, short-term policy making, self-interested stuff, and the rise of what globally we have observed as neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is sort of, it's a kind of, you can call it, it's many things. It's a set of ideas, it's a set of values. It's also, I mean, it's not so much used to describe movements, but it's come in waves and been driven by particular actors. So you can think of it as sort of an elite movement as well. But the story of neoliberalism is that, you know, the way it's usually told, it starts in the 1980s, and unfortunately, and particularly in this country, if not elsewhere, it continues very much into the present. और मुझे जहाँ तक नज़र आया, it doesn't matter कि, you know, who has won elections, who is in charge, it hasn't really made a policy difference in this country to how the sector is run. So just very briefly to tell you a little bit about this. Basically, in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, there was a decision made to break WAPTA up. अब उस वक्त आपको पता होगा कि उस वक्त तक WAPTA ही था जो कि हमारे पूरे मुल्क में बिजली फराहम करता था, और वो सब कुछ करता था, जनरेशन भी करता था, ट्रांसमिशन भी करता था, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन भी करता था. लेकिन 80 की दहाई में टुवर्ड्स द एंड ये फ़ैसला किया गया कि वापटा को 3 टुकड़ों में तकसीम कर दिया जाएगा और जनरेशन को प्राइवेटाइज कर दिया जाएगा, विद द आइडिया कि जनरेशन के बाद बाकी फंक्शंस भी जनरेशन के और ट्रांसमिशन के और डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन के दे वुड फॉलो, लेकिन पहले हम जनरेशन को करेंगे. तो और जनरेशन में एक तजर्बा किया गया था 1986 में, ये शुरू हुआ था बिफोर द 1990 पॉलिसी आई कम टू, लेकिन 1986 में शुरू हुआ था, 10 साल लगे थे approximately for it to roll out. आपने शायद सुना होगा हबको का, maybe people have heard of हबको. Hubco at the time, in 1986, 1988, when it was conceived and then the work started on it, it was the 1200 something megawatts. It was the single biggest private power generation project in all of Asia. And they decided to use Pakistan as a lab rat. Or Pakistan offered itself as a lab rat. I don't know which of the two it was. I think it was a bit of both. क्योंकि इसमें World Bank की involvement बहुत थी, इसमें international lenders की involvement बहुत थी, और it was considered a great success by some and a total failure by others. And it's interesting to see who considered it a success and who considered it a failure. The Hubco was loaded by numerous market analysis firms at the time in the early 90s as ek mujhko yaad hai, it's something that gets referenced in the sort of literature quite a lot, Euromoney Investor, big market analysis firm, global, always looking to see, how markets are doing, where is profitability like, where are returns to finance good, where are they bad. Hubco was described as the deal of the year in 1994 for investors. Then, 5 years later, in 1999, it was described by the same company, front page of its big fancy publications, as the deal of the decade. So this tells you that it was looking pretty good for capital at the time. But then when you talk to NTDC, the transmission at the time, or the system dispatcher ये होता है कि वो centrally manage करते हैं कि जी जहाँ से भी बिजली जमा हो रही बन रही है उसको आप किसकी बिजली ग्रिड पर ऑन करेंगे ताकि वो फिर आगे जाए. ठीक है, अब सिस्टम डिस्पैचर ने 2001 और 2006 के दरमियान ये फैसला किया कि जी हम economic dispatch करेंगे सिर्फ, उसका मतलब ये कि हम we're going to prioritize least cost generation, and as opposed to other things that they do for base load stability, etc. When they did that between 2001 and 2006, this deal of the year project had to drop its generation by 77%. And what that tells you is that it was a great deal for the financiers, but not a good deal for consumers or for the state of Pakistan, or the state of Pakistan that had agreed a long-term power purchase agreement with this inefficient, costly generating plant to buy its electricity. Now, unfortunately, ये जो हबको का तजर्बा था हमने 1980s में किया, हमारी फिर अब अगेन किसी ने अखबार पढ़ा होगा तो उनको तो ये रटा हुआ होगा कि जी 1994 की पावर पॉलिसी जो बनी थी हमारी उसने किस तरीके से हमारे मुल्क को डुबोआ. 1994 की पावर पॉलिसी, अगेन मैं किसी अभी एक सीनियर एनर्जी सेक्टर ऑफिशियल से बात कर रही थी और मैंने कहा कि ये 1994 की पॉलिसी सर आप मुझको बताएं कि इस पर सोच क्या थी आपकी, क्योंकि ये 1994 की पॉलिसीज़ की एक बहुत this has set the direction for the development of the electricity sector in this country very, very strongly. ठीक है, तो that's often the starting point when we think about what's wrong with this sector. मैंने कहा तो ये कहाँ से, तो उन्होंने कहा कि जी मैं उस टाइम मैं वापटा में था, फिर मैं NTDC में था. We used to call this the do anything you want policy. उस वक्त भी जब ये पॉलिसी आई थी, इट वाज द डू एनीथिंग यू वांट पॉलिसी. और क्यों? Because according to that policy, the project developers were given the option to do anything they wanted. So they could choose their location, which is an extremely important matter when you're thinking about electricity generation, because you have to transmit it. आपका लोड किधर है, आपका जनरेशन किधर है, आपकी ट्रांसमिशन कैपेसिटी कितनी है, ये बहुत मतलब सीरियस कंसिडरेशंस होती हैं. तो आप कहीं पर भी लगा सकते थे, आप अपना फ्यूल सोर्स खुद चूज़ कर सकते थे. तो कि आपको भाई गैस से लगाना है या आपको एलएनजी से उस वक्त एलएनजी तो खैर कम ही थी, लेकिन गैस से लगाना है, तेल से लगाना है, हाइड्रो से लगा, it was up to them to choose their fuel source. They could choose their tariff. There was no competitive bidding process. They could also, and then it had to be approved, they could choose their plant efficiencies that they were going, there was no minimum efficiency that the plant had to operate at. So it was the do anything. I thought he encapsulated this really well. जब उन्होंने कहा तो मैंने कहा ये तो वैसे, ये तो बात बनती है. It was the do anything you want policy. बहरहाल ये जो 1994 का जो मॉडल है, जो IPP मॉडल है, ये अब पाकिस्तान में बहुत फर्मली इस्टेब्लिश हो चुका है. उसके बाद दीगर पॉलिसियाँ आई हैं, 2002 की थी, 2015 की थी, सबके तहत कमिशनिंग्स हुई हैं, लेकिन ये मॉडल बहुत फर्मली इस्टेब्लिश्ड हो चुका है. और एंड ऑल नॉन हाइड्रो जनरेशन इज़ नाउ इंडक्टेड थ्रू इट. So my point is basically, and one tiny more thing on this, which is that because Pakistan is a risky place for capital, right? It's not lots of things happen here. यहाँ पर political instability होती है, आपका debt के मसले हो रहे हैं, आप default की तरफ जा रहे हैं, आपका balance of payments collapse हो रहा है, ये सारी चीज़ें चल रही हैं. तो यहाँ पर कैपिटल को रिटर्न्स में थोड़ी सी दिक्कत होती है. अभी आप देखें $250 million हम अभी सीपेक के सिर्फ एक साहिवाल वाले प्लांट को हमने नहीं दिए. चाइनीज़ तो रो रहे हैं अब कि भैया हमारे पैसे किधर हैं. तो लेकिन जब आपका इस तरह का माहौल होता है, आपको फिर अगर आपके पास कोई सरमायादार आता है और कहता है कि जी ठीक है आपने हमको बुलाया है, आपको उसको कुछ और देना भी पड़ता है ना. You have to give them high returns. So just to take this back to the high cost of generation, this is one very obvious reason for the high cost of electricity in this country. And it's the privatization of our electricity generation sector. And why did this privatization occur at this time? I don't know. I mean, I think there's this, ये सिर्फ पाकिस्तान में नहीं हुआ था 1990s में, ये तकरीबन 6 दर्जन मुल्कों में हुआ था around this time. Pakistan was an early mover on this, लेकिन ये तकरीबन ये बहुत से मुल्कों में हुआ था. और ये बात नहीं है, मतलब ये ज़रूर है कि आपके जो lending institutions हैं, your IFIs, your World Banks, your ADBs, they were very strong proponents. The World Bank in particular, the ADB a bit less, लेकिन World Bank in particular was a very strong कि भाई आप प्राइवेटाइज करें. UK ने कर लिया है, आप देखें कि UK was leading on this, दीगर मुल्कों ने किया कि भाई इनको देखें आप बिल्कुल ये कर सकते हैं. तो उनकी तरफ से धक्का ज़रूर आया, लेकिन मुझको लोगों से बात करके जो सेक्टर के अंदर काम करते रहे हैं पिछले बहुत सालों से, मुझको ये भी अब क्लियर समझ आ गया है कि रियासत के अंदर से एक पुश था और पुश है कि जी हमने we have to privatize because the public sector is incapable of running a productive enterprise. आप अभी देखें, we're trying to divest PIA, बहुत सारी चीज़ों को, और हमारा जो तजर्बा रहा है प्राइवेटाइजेशन के साथ वो को बहुत अच्छा नहीं रहा. हमने आपके जनरेशन आपके सामने, बैंक्स की प्राइवेटाइजेशन आप देख लें, it's been a disaster. There's no one who will say that the privatization of Pakistani banking has been a success, because what Pakistani banks have done is turn around and basically not lend to those who need it, or the small and medium enterprises जिसको कहते हैं, that makes up the bulk of productive activity in the 40% of Pakistan GDP comes from SMEs, but they receive 5% of finance only of their credit from banks. The rest is just the banks now lend to the government because it's safe. Anyway, that's a tangent. Point is that there's a deep-seated belief within Pakistan, within those who man the state, that we are incapable of handling this. So while the rest of the world is moving towards, अब आप देखें कि यूक्रेन की इन्वेजन, रशियन इन्वेजन के बाद और कोविड हुआ उससे पहले, अब मुल्क की, दुनिया की सूरत हाल थोड़ी बदल गई है. You know, the big powers, they've kind of turned in on themselves. There's a lot more economic protectionism. There's a lot more public money being spent on public infrastructure, on investment. आप अमेरिका को देखें, उनका जो इन्फ्लेशन रिडक्शन एक्ट है, वो आप इंग्लैंड के ग्रीन ग्रोथ प्रोग्राम्स को देखें. पाकिस्तान में हम फिर भी नियो लिबरल पटरी के जी, स्टेट बैड, public sector bad, private sector good. We don't want to, you know, have any element of sort of self-sufficient development or protection even from the fluctuations that come from being part of these extremely vulnerable global supply chains. We feel the shocks, but it's okay, that's a price we'll pay. So anyway, I think there's a solarization, right, to go back to solarization. Solarization is nothing more than like an autarkic privatization, a further step of privatization, जिस तरीके से अभी हो रही है. आपके सामने हर बंदा जिसके पास पैसे हैं वो उठाकर अपने छत पे लगा रहा है. तो ये पाकिस्तान में एक पुराना अमल है. आरिफ हसन आप जानते होंगे, कुछ में आप उनका काम, बहुत मशहूर आर्किटेक्ट और अर्बन प्लानर हैं कराची के. उन्होंने बहुत पहले, and I think in a very prescient piece he wrote about the roots of elite alienation in Pakistan. उन्होंने कहा कि ये इन्होंने 1980s के आखिर में लिखा था, या शायद it was early 90s, I can't remember. लेकिन उन्होंने ये एक छोटा सा पीस था 4 पेज का, लेकिन उसमें जो उनको जो what he saw was extremely prescient and is very true today, which is basically that there is the elite have retreated behind their high walls. Ziaul Haq आया, तो उसकी इस्लामाइजेशन से जो आपकी सेक्युलर लिबरल वेस्टर्नाइज्ड एलीट थी वो डर गई. लेकिन उनको वो जो भुट्टो जिस पॉपुलर वेव पर आया था वो भी डिस्ट्रप्शन नहीं चाहिए थी, क्योंकि दैट वाज थ्रेटनिंग देयर क्लास पोजीशन. तो उन्होंने क्या किया, they erected high walls and they went behind it. They took their children out of state schools and they sent them to private schools. They stopped traveling on the railways and they started traveling in cars. They stopped going to the public parks and instead they started setting up private clubs. तो ये सारी चीज़ें, एक प्रोसेस उस वक्त का शुरू हुआ. और आरिफ साहब ने कहा कि अगर ये नहीं रुकता है तो फिर इस मुल्क का कुछ नहीं होगा. Absolutely. And so what I'm posing to you, and again, this is not rocket science, is that what's happening with solarization is a step along the way of that. And my worry is that what we're entering is a kind of energy apartheid. कि जिसके पास पैसे हैं वो लगा ले, जिसके पास पैसे नहीं हैं वो ग्रिड पर रहे. और जैसे हम कह रहे थे, उसकी कीमतें तो बढ़ती जाएंगी. ख़ास तौर पर अब इसका इफेक्ट क्या पड़ेगा ऑन द फिस्कल हेल्थ ऑफ द स्टेट, अल्लाह ही जानता है. बिकॉज अभी सर्कुलर डेट 6 to 8% of GDP, I don't know what the figures are. It's either 6%, 7% or 8%. It doesn't matter, it's a huge amount. ठीक है, वो बढ़ेगी, फिर क्या हम डिफ़ॉल्ट की तरफ जाएंगे. मामला काफ़ी अब मैक्रो, ये सेक्टर का मामला जो है ना, ये एक्चुअली एक मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक मामला बन गया है, बिकॉज द स्केल इज़ सो बिग. सो और बहुत सारी चीज़ें हो सकती हैं. हम अगर अफ्रीका को देखें, ईस्ट अफ्रीका में शुरू हुआ मामला, अब ये थोड़ा स्प्रेड हो गया है, वेस्ट अफ्रीका की तरफ जा रहा है. लेकिन वहाँ पर देयर इज़ अ इंटरेस्टिंग मॉडल ऑफ सोलराइजेशन टेकिंग प्लेस. वहाँ पर हो ये रहा है कि और वहाँ पर एनर्जी एक्सेस के बहुत शदीद मसाइल हैं. यू नो, सम कंट्रीज़ सच एज़ मलावी वेयर 90% ऑफ द कंट्री इज़ ऑफ ग्रिड. ठीक है, दे आर नॉट कनेक्टेड. Same for many other countries. But वहाँ पर हो ये रहा है कि you now have companies coming in, big companies, using the established GSM mobile phone networks, मोबाइल वॉलेट्स, मोबाइल मनी, जो यहाँ पर इजी पैसा और ये इस तरह के और दीगर हैं. And through these platforms, they are offering loans to people for small scale solar home systems. You know, 2-3 पैनल, जिस तरह यहाँ पर भी है कि लोगों ने घर पे 2-3 पैनल लगाए, 2 पैनल लगाए हुए हैं, उससे आपकी एक पंखा चल जाता है, आपके 4 लाइटें चल जाती हैं. They are primarily European and American. And they are they're operating increasingly in West Africa now, and having consolidated a big East African market. तो ये करते ये हैं कि they give you a loan that you can then reap through. So they loan you money through your mobile wallet. And people are very used to using their mobile wallets in East Africa. It started in Kenya. आपने शायद M-Pesa की कहानी शुरू सुनी होगी. आप कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं?
No, I'm Sohail Awan. I'm based in Nairobi. I work with UN. M-Pesa started in Kenya. It was a pilot in 2003-04. The penetration is more than 80%. Mobile lending platforms, these are necessarily all local. Whether M-Pesa, Safaricom, and Safaricom is in almost all East African countries. Africa की जो आप बात कर रही हैं, there are 600 million people in Africa who don't have electricity. So just wanted to add these figures.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And that's a large number, right? So I think what's happening is that, as per the wisdom of there's wealth at the bottom of the pyramid, i.e. there's money to be made off the poor, there is, so let's give them energy access, but let's also take a little bit of make a little bit of money off that. That's what's happening. And so, loans are being offered and systems are being offered, and this is all fine. It's just that these loans then these loans are not friendly loans. They're not exorbitant. They're not like going to a money lender, but sometimes, and then once people are on the system, there's observation after observation from in the literature that people are then offered the sale of appliances and upgrades to their solar home systems that they can ill afford, and so then they are stuck in a debt trap. And that's something that I was wondering whether that's something that we might see in Pakistan. I'm not sure we are not seeing that yet, not on any scale. Rural Sindh में थोड़ी सी ये penetration है इस तरह की companies की, लेकिन I'm not seeing that so far in Pakistan. Anyway, so I think I'm going to finish now. I'm going to skip over some of these thoughts. In conclusion, I think I want to leave you with two things, okay? One is, and I appreciate that, I've kind of been a little bit all over the place, but I think that's fair enough. The climate crisis is not fixable by going 100% renewable, right? The climate crisis is much bigger than something that renewable energy and the decarbonization of the world can fix. And it has to do with, as we were talking about earlier, it has to do with the amount of stuff that we consume, that we dig out of the earth and that we throw back into it as waste. The earth and the planet and its the sort of subsystems that comprise the global ecosystem have a rhythm of their own that include human beings. But the way that human beings have acted on the planet over the last 300 years has totally thrown this planet off. And the planet is currently reeling and saying, what the fuck, basically, right? So, but going renewable, even 100%, is not going to fix this problem, but it's part of the solution. It's a necessary part of what needs to happen right now. So ये जो 24 gigawatt solar panels अभी पाकिस्तान में आए हैं और ये जो इक्का दुक्का utility scale आपके solar और wind plants लगे हैं जो grid को feed कर रहे हैं, बिस्मिल्लाह आएं, ठीक है? लेकिन कोई भी technology, and this is my second concluding point, no technology is neutral, is policy, is power political neutral. It has a social history, and it has embedded within it, and it shapes social futures, right? And so we are right now at the cusp, and I don't think we often realize it, but we are living in a time of great disruption that is only going to speed up, necessitated by the destruction that has been wrought on this planet, but now our response to it. Okay? These are moments of disruption, of crisis. It might not feel like it right now because Pakistan's always in crisis. Right? हमको तो नज़र ही नहीं आता है क्योंकि कभी ये क्राइसिस होता है, कभी वो क्राइसिस होता है, कभी ये लोग मर रहे होते हैं, कभी उनके ऊपर डिसअपीयरेंसेस और फायरिंग हो रही होती है. लेकिन आलमी तौर पर this is a moment. And I think the question for us here is, how are we preparing for this? Because we know that change, good change, which is the kind of change I'm most interested in, and I'm guessing you are most interested in, change happens in moments of disruption, not in normal moments, but when things get shaken up. And when things get shaken up, you have to be ready to take advantage of that. So I think the question to ask ourselves in our organizations, in our social groups, in our political parties, or whatever we're associated with, whatever collectivities we are part of, is how are we preparing for this, both sort of thinking locally and thinking bigger than that and anticipating the future a bit. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you. It was really nice of you to address a very important topic. The way you said at the start about the transition, what do you reckon, what is the main reason behind this transition not happening? Is the petroleum mafia and the car companies? And when we say, secondly, the renewable energy, sun and wind is renewable, but our panels and wind turbines strictly don't qualify as renewables. And lastly, what other sources do we have that we can really look for renewable energy in future?
Yeah, thank you. So your first question is, why is the transition not happening? Well, I think part of the answer you gave yourself, right? There is, well, if we think of, again, to go back to energy as a political matter, it's also an economic matter, it's also political. They are entrenched, there's a lobby. There's historically entrenched interests, fossil fuel interests, they are working very hard to make sure that their assets are not stranded. That's what they call stranded assets. They're written off and not used, and so they're not able to recover their costs and generate their expected revenues. So that's big part of it, and we see that. Abhi ye jo COP29 hua tha Azerbaijan mein, maybe some of you followed that, but Azerbaijan is a big oil producing country. In the last COP, where was it? Do you know? It was in Qatar. It was in Doha. And the COP before that was in Egypt. Anyway, these are, basically the oil. And when you host a big climate summit like that, you have a lot of power. You're not just a disinterested bystander. And the analysis that have come out of the single most important summit, I think, in the world today, that is going to determine what happens to stop us from hurtling off, or not stop us from hurtling off the precipice, is being hosted in an oil producing state. And what did he say? Oil is our gift to the world. So, Yes, there is the oil, the fossil fuel lobby is a strong one. Secondly, I'll be very quick here. The second, this is that book that I wish I'd brought with me, that geographer I was telling you about, Brett Christophers. His argument about profitability is very interesting. He says कि देखें, until you understand the cost structure, renewables are not going to take off, because basically they're very different than fossil fuels, because the upfront costs of renewable energy, of a solar plant or a wind plant, they are 95% of the project cost. जबकि आपका गैस प्लांट लगता है तो वो 30-40% होता है, बाकी आपका फिर फ्यूल कॉस्ट होता है, जो कि ओवर द लाइफ ऑफ द प्रोजेक्ट 30 years 35 years आपको डालना पड़ता है उसके अंदर. ठीक है, यहाँ पर you have to stump up all the money up front, and because usually the way that these projects are being developed is on a debt equity model, so you have to borrow lots of money. Now the people you're borrowing money, it's an 80-20 usually. लोग 20% अपना पैसा डालते हैं, 80% borrow करते हैं कमर्शियल लेंडर से या जो भी. और जब वो उस तरह करते हैं तो लेंडर आपको कहता है कि जी अच्छा, आपको कैसे पता कि आपकी रेवेन्यू स्ट्रीम स्टेबल रहेगी अगले 30 साल के लिए, क्योंकि उसके बगैर तो आप मेरे पैसे वापस नहीं कर सकेंगे. तो एक वजह ये है. दूसरी वजह ये है कि रिन्यूएबल्स, आप अगर ऑयल लॉबी को देखें, दे हैव अ मोनोपोली, राइट? दे exert a kind of monopoly power, because you know, the sun and the wind is, everybody can access it, and now you know, किसी के पास थोड़ा सा पैसा आता है वो लगा लेता है. ऑयल के साथ तो आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते हैं. आप देखेंगे एवरी टाइम दे थ्रेटन, दे ओपेक प्रोडक्शन कट करती है और प्राइस राइज होता है. सोलर और विंड के साथ तो ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है. तो और दीगर भी वजूहात हैं, बट अगेन द कॉस्ट स्ट्रक्चर, दैट्स व्हाट आई एम सेइंग, दिस गाय's analysis I find very, very on point. You had other questions, but I feel like I'm talking too much.
Let's say solar and wind would qualify as alternative sources of energy.
Right.
And then if we look towards any other renewable sources like biomass and hydrogen,
Yeah.
even something.
Yeah,
some
hydrogen is an
expert-
interesting one. I mean, green hydrogen पर बहुत काम हो रहा है. There's quite a lot of money being pumped into the development of green hydrogen. Green hydrogen will then get used in, you know, in cars and in the manufacture of fertilizer and things like that. And fertilizer, by the way, fertilizer takes a lot of energy, a lot of is consumed. But the problem with hydrogen is that in order to produce hydrogen, you have to use a lot of energy to do that to begin with. So unless you have a decarbonized electricity production system, you know, then you'll just be, you won't be able to produce clean green hydrogen. So you have to work on the solar and wind. The solar and wind are this cost of solar right now is 4 cents a watt, right? Which is something like, I don't know, it's at least 100 or 200% less. Actually, no, it's 60 to 70% less than gas, which is the next. And hydro varies too much to be able to, for me to know what the average cost is. But solar is very cheap right now, and you're absolutely right that the material technologies used to convert, you know, the sun's rays into electricity that we can use are not renewable. And we have a massive problem on our hands उस हवाले से, क्योंकि होगा ये कि 20-25 साल के बाद जब ये जो generation renewable infrastructure और technology की है, इसको ये replace होगी. ठीक है, ये नहीं होता है कि आपने पैनल लगा लिया और वो हमेशा के लिए चलेगा. इसकी लाइफ होती है 20 साल की होती है, 25 साल की होती है मैक्स. And they take space. So how are we going to deal with the waste? And then, well, we have to recycle it back in, but there's no developments on that yet.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mr. Abid. मेरा ताल्लुक या मेरा field of research spirituality, natural sciences and political economy. मैडम मैंने 3 कंक्रीट पॉइंट नोट किए हैं और उस पे आपकी वो नज़र या आपकी आउटलुक चाहिए. नंबर 1 मैडम, अयूब दौर की इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन, भट्टो दौर की नेशनलाइजेशन और ज़िया साहब के दौर का दोबारा प्राइवेटाइजेशन, इसमें कहाँ से अच्छाई थी या कहाँ ख़राबी आ गई? नंबर वन. नंबर टू, मैडम आपने 1994 या 90s की बात की. एट दैट टाइम आई वाज द स्टूडेंट ऑफ पेशावर यूनिवर्सिटी, और इन चीज़ों को हम नोट किया करते थे कि वर्ल्ड बैंक या बैरूनी इदारों की तरफ से ज़रा पुश भी था हबको के मामले में, और आपने एक पॉइंट की तरफ इशारा किया कि रियासत के अंदर से भी सपोर्ट मिलती है. क्या ये कसदन करते हैं, ना समझ होते हैं, या प्लांटेड लोग होते हैं? दिस इज़ माई सेकंड क्वेश्चन. एंड माई थर्ड क्वेश्चन इज़, आपने बिल्कुल आखिर में अर्ज़ किया कि हाउ वी आर गोइंग टू प्रिपेयर फॉर इट. तो मैडम, जिस तरह आपकी बायोग्राफी में हमने पढ़ा, इसके लिए पॉलिटिकल सोशियोलॉजिस्ट बनना मुफीद होगा या पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमिस्ट बनना काम देगा? सो
नाइदर एक्चुअली. आपके जो आखिरी सवाल है, इस नहीं, पॉलिटिकल एक्टिविस्ट बनना ज़रूरी होगा. हाँ, लेकिन आप ये बड़ी बात है कि मतलब क्या करना चाहिए. देखिए, अब मैं बंद कमरे में बैठी रहूं और मैं किसी से बात ना करूं, मैं अपनी ड्यूटी को जाऊं सुबह और वापस घर आऊं, अपने बच्चे पालूं और मतलब शुगल दुनिया में, मतलब अपने लिव माय लाइफ, उससे कुछ नहीं होगा. Interesting. I don't think we're all political activists. Political activism to me means. अच्छा, ठीक है, मेरे ख्याल ठीक है, मैं समझ गई. पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी, पॉलिटिकल सोशियोलॉजी, इन दोनों के दरमियान मुझे कोई फ़र्क नहीं नज़र आता है इस हवाले से. आपके जो सवाल जो मैं समझी हूँ. दूसरी जो आपका सवाल था कि क्या ये जो रियासत के अंदर लोग प्राइवेटाइजेशन की तरफ जाना चाह रहे थे, क्या ये प्लांटेड लोग हैं? नहीं, बिल्कुल भी नहीं. ये लोग मुख्तलिफ हैं, ये इनके ख़यालात मुख्तलिफ जगहों पर जर्मिनेट हुए हैं, और लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि ऐसे लोग हैं जो कि बिल्कुल सिस्टम के अंदर रह कर तंग आ गए हैं. कुछ ऐसे लोग हैं जिन्होंने कोशिश की है कुछ अच्छा काम करने की, या कोई ईमानदारी से काम करने की, और वो सिस्टम से डिफ़ीट हुए हैं. क्योंकि इस मुश्किल है यहाँ पर, ख़ास तौर पर अगर आप ब्यूरोक्रेसी में एक हद तक पहुँच जाते हैं. जो मिड लेवल ब्यूरोक्रेट होता है, उसके पास ये एक तरह से एक चॉइस होती है कि जी, क्या मैं अपनी हाँ करूँगा अपने सीनियर को, या मैं वो करूँगा जो मैं समझता हूँ वाकई में होना चाहिए. अगर आप हाँ नहीं करते हैं तो आप सीनियर लेवल ब्यूरोक्रेट नहीं बनते हैं. तो ये आपके पास एक सीधी सादी करियर पाथ होती है. Your first question, I'm afraid I can't answer because that will take too long. सब में मसले थे, और मसले उससे पहले भी जाते हैं. अगर आप 19 मतलब, it depends on how far you want to trace it. It starts from before Pakistan was born. So.
अच्छा, दुनिया को बचाना है तो सिर्फ रिन्यूएबल से मसला हल नहीं होगा. मैं इस बात पे पूरी तरह से इत्तफाक करता हूँ. असल चीज़ ये है कि कंजम्पशन कम करना है, उसे लिमिट करना है, और ये सिर्फ बिजली की बात नहीं है. तमाम जो प्रोडक्ट्स कैपिटलिज्म के ज़रिए से पैदा होते हैं और जो सिर्फ मुनाफा कमाने के लिए बनाए जाते हैं, हमें इनकी तादाद के ऊपर, ग्रोथ के ऊपर अब कंट्रोल करने की ज़रूरत है, और ग्रोथ में पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ भी शामिल है. अच्छा, ये तो एक बात है, अमूमी बात थी, इससे कोई मेरा ख्याल इख्तलाफ नहीं हो सकता. लेकिन जो तारीख़ की बात है ना, उसको कुछ ईमानदारी से देखने की ज़रूरत है. तो मुझे पता नहीं, मैंने ये किताबें नहीं पढ़ी जिसका अभी हवाला दिया गया, लेकिन ये बात सही नहीं हो सकती कि कोल टू ऑयल की ट्रांजिशन इसलिए हुई कि इसमें प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी ही मद्देनज़र रखा गया. वो एक चीज़ हो सकती है, लेकिन कोयले और तेल में बहुत बड़ा फ़र्क है.
No, I'm
कोयले
sorry.
में
आपने मेरी बात मिसअंडरस्टैंड की है. मैं ये नहीं कह रही थी कि द ट्रांजिशन फ्रॉम कोल टू ऑयल वाज लेड बाय प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी. आई एम नॉट मेकिंग दैट आर्ग्यूमेंट एट ऑल. आई डिडंट से दैट. I said that the transition, Timothy Mitchell's argument is that it was to break labor power and thus enable a kind of freer control of the resource. The fungibility of oil enabled that.
वो एक एलिमेंट इसमें है, एक एलिमेंट हो सकता, लेकिन जो फर्क कोयले और तेल में है वो तो जमीन और आसमान का है। जो उनकी कैलोरीफिक वैल्यूज हैं, कोयला आप एक गाड़ी में नहीं इस्तेमाल कर सकते। हाँ, वो रेल का इंजन होता था, वो कोयले से चलता था, लेकिन आप गाड़ियां कोयले पे नहीं चला सकते। नहीं, लेकिन वो नहीं चल सकते। देखिए ना, आपको ये देखना होता है कि पर किलोग्राम उसकी कैलोरीफिक वैल्यू कितनी है। तो इस एतबार से मैं ये टिमोथी मिचेल की बात कबूल नहीं कर सकता। देर आर स्पेसिफिक एडवांटेजेस टू सर्टन टेक्नोलॉजीज। अब ये टेक्नोलॉजीज देखिए, वो कैपिटलिज्म के जरिए से ही पैदा होती है, एक कैपिटलिस्ट निज़ाम में पैदा होती हैं। अब ये सोलर पावर, ये किसी सोशलिस्ट निज़ाम की पैदावार नहीं है, वो भी कैपिटलिज्म की पैदावार है। अब इस पर हम किस तरह से कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं, इसको कैसे बेहतर इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, हमें उस पर सोचने की ज़रूरत है।
Just a very quick response to you. मुझे आपकी पहली बात और दूसरी बात में कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन नज़र आ रही है, ठीक है? आप एक तरफ से ये कह रहे हैं कि कैलोरीफिक जो बिल्कुल दुरुस्त बात है कि द एनर्जी डेंसिटी ऑफ कोल वर्सेस द एनर्जी डेंसिटी ऑफ ऑयल इज़ इनकम्पैरेबल. आई थिंक इट्स समथिंग लाइक actually I can't remember, but it's a big difference. ये बात बिल्कुल दुरुस्त है. और जो सोलर है उसकी तो काफ़ी कम है, you know, in terms of the amount of radiation it's able to convert. Its energy density is low by that. लेकिन जब हम कहते हैं कि हमको सिर्फ और सिर्फ हायर प्रोडक्टिविटी और हायर प्रोडक्टिविज्म के पीछे भागने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, जो आपने मेरे ख्याल से इज़ द इम्प्लिकेशन ऑफ योर फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ आर्ग्यूमेंट, ठीक है? If we're looking at production for need rather than for profit, then perhaps that metric of energy density doesn't actually matter that much. और उस वक्त जब ये transitions हो रहे थे, जब पानी से कोयला, कोयले से तेल तक ये transitions हो रहे थे, तो उस वक्त energy density was not, that is what these historians have documented. And that's very interesting. Look, from hindsight bestows upon us a perspective that people in the moment didn't have. And so then to say that, you know, a transition was driven by the sort of objective value of, or the objectively better performing materiality of one fuel source over another, that might be what it appears to us in hindsight. But in the moment, that is not part of what people were discussing, debating, the considerations that were at work in that transition. And I think that is very telling, because that is the motor force of what drives what happens in that moment. So thank you for your comment.
Ji. Achha, I would like to endorse your conclusion about the climate change. In a word, it's a lost cause now. If you look at 2024, carbon emissions was the highest, temperature was the highest, and disasters in terms of frequency has increased manifold, be they are snowstorms, floods, flash floods, wildfires. And interestingly, the profit of the oil companies was the highest in 2024, which means if you put together all these renewable initiatives, you know, be they are solar or wind or tidal or geothermal and other mitigation activities, they haven't been able to make any dent in the carbon emissions. And we have already lost the, you know, milestones that we were supposed to achieve. So, but apart from that, like you said, but this is now, you know, at the macro level, it is not going to make much difference. But at the micro level, this is very, you know, critical for communities or, you know, poor people. If they are, you know, these solar technologies accessible to them or other such technologies. So that was my case. This is still relevant not at the micro level, but micro level, this is relevant for, poor communities or, lower strata of the society. Thank you.
शुक्रिया मैडम. दो बातें छोटी छोटी सी हैं. एक तो एज ए नेशन हमारा जो बिहेवियर है, ये रिन्यूएबल या अल्टरनेटिव रिसोर्सेज ऑफ एनर्जी, जब हम एनर्जी वेस्ट ही इतनी बेशुमार कर रहे हैं, इतनी बेशुमार, तो डू वी हैव एनी सॉल्वेशन रियली? कभी गुर्बत का मसला, कभी फलां, कभी फलां, कभी अब लाइटें देखें हमारे बाहर गलियों में जिसे हम चिरागां कहते हैं, हमारे ये हैबिट्स देखें दुकानों के और मार्केटों के खुलने की और बंद होने की. एक जगह पे एक बल्ब की जगह पे हम 10 बल्ब लगाएंगे हर जगह. तो डज इट हैव, मेरे मतलब कोई इसकी कौम की तरबियत, ट्रेनिंग, बताना, कहना कि भाई हर चीज़ का टाइम है और वो करें. दूसरी बात काइंडली इस पर भी मैं तो कन्विंस हूँ कि वी आर अनएबल टू प्रिडिक्ट इन रीजनेबली गुड वेल इन फ्यूचर. सारे मामलात में देख लें, पॉलिसी में, जंगों में, अमन में, एवरीवेयर. इसी तरह 90s में वी वर अनएबल टू प्रिडिक्ट कि IPPs क्या करेंगे हमारे साथ. तो इज़ इट नॉट शेयर इनकॉम्पिटेंस ऑफ वट एवर एशेलोन पीपल आर देयर टू डिसाइड कि अगर हमने पूरी कौम को यहाँ लैंड करा दिया इस वक्त, anybody responsible, anybody regretting, anybody accepting responsibility for this crisis? इस डायरेक्शन में काइंडली अगर आप थोड़ी सी रोशनी.
नहीं, देखें, ये मसला जो है, ये इसीलिए मैं कह रही हूँ कि मेरे ख़्याल से ये टेक्निकल मसला नहीं है. ये मसला है कि हमारा जो समाजी, सियासी, माशी सिस्टम है यहाँ पर, ये जिस तर्ज पे चलता है और उसके सेंटर में जो क़ुव्वत बैठी हुई है, जो कि इस सारे म्यूज़िकल चेयर्स को अपने इर्द गिर्द खिलाती है. ठीक है, हमारे जो हुक्मरान हैं, जो इलेक्ट होकर आते हैं, उनको तो 2 सेकंड की परवाह नहीं होती है कि जी एक्चुअली हाउ शुड वी मेक इफ़ेक्टिव गुड लॉन्ग साइटेड पॉलिसी. वो तो इस चक्कर में कि वो अपनी कुर्सी बचाएं. ठीक है, और एक तरह से उनकी भी मजबूरी आपको समझ आती है, क्योंकि आप जब इस मुल्क में जब आप इक़्तिदार में होते हैं तो आप सब कुछ आपका है. जब आप इक़्तिदार में नहीं हैं तो आप जेल में. तो until the sort of rules of the game change, और ये जो हमारी जो पूरी सियासी सूरत हाल है, ये तब्दील नहीं होती है, बीच में से फ़ौज अपने बैरक्स में वापस नहीं जाती है, जब तक एक तरह की हम आपस में जहनी हमआंगी नहीं बनाते हैं, तो उस वक्त तक तो मेरे ख़्याल से बहुत ज़्यादा उम्मीद रखना मुमकिन नहीं है. ऐसे लोग हैं बिल्कुल. आपको बताया मैंने अपनी इधर जो डिस्कशन आपके साथ शेयर की कि हैं ऐसे ऑफिशियल्स एनर्जी सेक्टर में जो जानते हैं कि सही फ़ैसला क्या था उस वक्त 1990s में. लेकिन उनको ये भी पता था कि उन्होंने चीखा चिल्लाया भी, और जिन्होंने कुछ ज़्यादा चीखा चिल्लाया उनको निकाल दिया गया. वो भी सामने आया है मेरे इंटरव्यूज़ में. अब वो कहते हैं कि हमारे नाम ना लीजिएगा, हालांकि ये 30 साल पहले की बात है, लेकिन उनको अभी तक डर है जो इस वक्त हैं बात करने के लिए, मतलब रिटायर्ड. तो मामला बहुत गंभीर है. मेरे पास आसान जवाब नहीं है.
Thank you for a very interesting talk, and it was very cohesive. And you came to the problem from a very simplistic way and explained a very complicated problem. So thank you for that. I can't stop thinking about your car battery. So yes, and the tons and tons of ore that was dug up to create that battery. So with renewable energy, is it really safe for the planet? Because with solar power, I mean, I'm not tech savvy, but this solar power, we need to store it somewhere, right? So we need a battery. With oil, you don't need to store it because the energy is already stored in oil. All you need to do is transport it. So is it really healthy for the planet?
Great question. And the answer is no. Not on the scale that we are thinking to do it. The scale that we are thinking to do it on is as I said, the idea is to electrify everything, and now the big push everywhere, and the United States is rushing to do this. They're introducing like some kind of iron technology, iron-based batteries, and they want to scale those up. Lithium, nickel, cobalt, all of these metals are necessary for this transition that's about to take place. And you're absolutely right. Like, it is incredibly destructive to do that. So the idea that we can continue to produce and consume at the horizon that the West has set for us, कि जी, ये पैमाना होना चाहिए हमारा, this is what a good life looks like, that is completely unsustainable. So the idea, part of what we have to do is reconceptualize what the good life is, right? There's one more problem here, which is, आपने जो बात किया कि mining, it's a problem that's familiar to us. जिन इलाकों में, जिन ममालिक में अब ये critical minerals कहते हैं इनको, nickel, cobalt, lithium वगैरह, जहाँ ये discover हो रहे हैं, हमेशा नहीं लेकिन अक्सर ये उन ममालिक में हैं, जैसे कि आप Democratic Republic of Congo देख लें, इंडोनेशिया देख लें. सुनने में मुझे इस दफ़ा ये भी आया है कि जी कोई सुलेमान में लिथियम के कोई रिजर्व्स डिस्कवर हुए हैं, लेकिन उनको बहुत हश रखा जा रहा है क्योंकि उस पर तो खलबली मच जाएगी कि ये किसका है, क्या, कैसे. लेकिन these are often in poor developing countries. And so the problem, again, if they're going to be mined on a big scale, is what is that division, what are the terms of trade between rich countries and poor countries? The countries where the mining is taking place, meaning the low value input of production, versus the countries where the high value manufacturing is taking place, where they take that cobalt, lithium, nickel, whatever, turn it into EVs and then sell it back to us. No, the only solution is to change the terms of that exchange, and to bring everyone on a significantly more equal footing. It's not just them, it's also us. They'd invade for sure. But this is not a debate we should get into in this way. We can talk.
Okay, I have a question. This is Meri bari hai. This is a follow-up question to this gentleman's comment. So my background is in education. I do teacher training and teacher professional development. तो सवाल ये था कि बाशऊर अवाम कैसे बनानी है, ठीक है? तो बाशऊर अवाम बनानी है, अच्छी बात है. बहुत गंभीर मसला पेश किया आपने, बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स है. अगर आप इसको कूजे में बंद करेंगी, नैरो डाउन करेंगी, so that I can share this with teachers, let's say 5th graders, ताकि उनको ये सवाल आसान तरीके से और some sort of like a activity हम उसको शेयर करें. कुछ आइडियाज़ होंगे आपके पास in a school setting, लेस कॉम्प्लेक्स करना, लेकिन फिर भी क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग स्किल्स को डेवलप करें कि भाई इस चीज़ के बारे में सोचो.
That's a really good question, and I don't have a set response. Let's talk about this later.
I would love to.
Because I think that this actually takes some thought. Because, as you say, it's very complicated to boil it down to something like a nugget. We can do that, though.
Again, may I? Just want to, answer the lady. I am also in education, right? And you know that there are lots of strategies that teachers use to, teach about energy conservation. And they don't work, right? Water conservation, we talk about that, right? And then in the morning, we keep the tap on to brush our teeth. We talk about it, we learn about it, we make posters, we present assembly presentations, but it's not working. So I think that's the bigger question, why is it not working? We have all the strategies of teaching and awareness, but I don't think have the will. Because as long as it's there for us to use, we're going to use it and we're going to waste it.
Actually, at the kids' winter camp, there was a session, how to save the planet. तो ये 9 से 12 साल के बच्चे थे और जो खातून यहाँ बैठी थीं जो अब चली गई हैं उन्होंने ये कंडक्ट किया था. तो अगर आप ये देखना चाहती हैं तो नेट के ऊपर मौजूद है. The kids came up with really interesting solutions. वो उसी वक्त बैठे बैठे उन्होंने वो घड़ लिए थे और बहुत मजा आया उनको सुनकर.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. My name is Shan Muhammad Rashid, and I'm a student and power user of knowledge. I consider myself a power user of knowledge because I'm actually searching for this solution to the problem that we're facing, not only for the climate, but also for our society as a whole. Because from my observation, though a lot of people, like you also mentioned, the solution is a policy-based. How I see it, from my observation, I'm a complete layman, so you all know more than me. But how I see it, political decisions are affected by social phenomenon. And the result of political decisions cause economic outcomes, which then cause social phenomena. So it's like this cycle right here. From what I'm seeing, because of it's like you can say the cycle kind of like stopped at the politics, because the controllers of society, I guess you can say the controllers, the owners and controller of global international capital, the oligarchy, you can say, they have complete control over our politics because they invest in all of the governments, they invest in all of the private sector, they control all of it. You all must know about it. So what their ultimate goal, as we can see, as far as I can understand, they just want profit, and they just want to keep their. I mean, there's more to it, but for we can see like an obvious way, they just want profit, and they have essentially cut off our own ability, the people's ability to control the economy. Because truly, the economy comes from the society. The only reason why we have an economy is because the society built it. Economy is basically just relationships between people, right? So from observing all of this, I want to get your take on it because you have done more research on it than I have. I'm just now starting. But from my observation, the best way we could actually solve all of these problems, like simultaneously, is to bring the economy back into the hands of the people. But to do that, there has to be a special mechanism, kind of like a combination between socialism and capitalism, like a capitalist socialism, a socialist system. Some organization must be able to mediate the investment of the people, rather than allowing the oligarchy to be the sole investors in the economy. Somehow, collectively, allow the society to invest. We already see this working with AMCs, the asset management companies, right? The average person, if they have more than 2 lakh rupees, they can invest in asset management funds, like in Al Mizan investments in different places. And the Al Mizan and all these places, they collectively take this money to invest. Like you said, 5% into the private sector for the middle class small businesses, and mostly they put into the government, like you said. That's right now. Right now, everyone's getting low returns. But if we were to have an organization to mediate the mass investments of just 100 rupees, 1,000 rupees, small investments of all of our millions of people in our country, and then utilize that for moving money rather than generating profit.
Sure.
Generate profit for them and also build the country.
Yeah.
Like this, I have a solution like this, but
I
what's
hear you.
Yeah.
No, I think that there's one thing that I definitely want to respond to here. I think that you're correct to identify that there are owners of capital who have a lot of power in the world, and then there's a lot of people who don't have power and don't have capital. Where I think that I disagree a bit with you is on the intentionality that you are attributing to the owners of capital and the extent to which they are able to control behavior. What I understand capitalism to be is a system. So you will have heard of Adam Smith and the invisible hand. And the reason that capitalism, well, he wasn't so much talking about capitalism, he was talking about markets. And he said the reason that markets, and sometimes markets are kind of synonymous with capitalism, the integral part of capitalism. The reason that markets work is not because any one person makes them work for anyone else or forces people into it. Markets, big markets, expansive markets, and the kinds of markets that we have now that span the globe, they work because everyone is able to find some avenue of advancement for themselves within it, right? This is actually, as someone who really doesn't like capitalism, this is what I struggle with. This is what all of us on the left struggle with, which is that capitalism has a logic that sucks people in and makes, it enables people, it has enabled people to think that this is a system that could work for them. But I think that's different than attributing, kind of very agentive, intentional behavior to those at the top. There is agentive, intentional behavior. There's definitely a desire to, grow power, become stronger, penetrate society, and, gain all of that. We have the Elon Musks of the world right now. You can see it, like ambition everywhere, right? But that is not every capitalist. And also, I don't think Elon Musk controls my behavior as much as my mother does, in a sense, So it's, yeah, and that's the other part of your question. And maybe I see you saying that maybe we should move on, but the solution that you're proposing is basically a socialist solution, right? And I'm on board with that. I mean, we could discuss the sort of mechanics or something like this, and it's not like that these experiments haven't taken place. They've taken place. If you look up the Mondragon cooperative in Spain, in the Basque Country, Mondragon, there's a lot of literature on the Mondragon Workers Cooperative that's probably the most successful example of the biggest workers cooperative in the world that was a complex conglomerate, in a sense. It wasn't just, a factory where the workers owned the shoemaking equipment, they produced shoes and they sold them. No, they had banking, they had finance, they had education, they had everything, a lot of things. So you might be interested in that example. Yeah, okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. Ma'am, क्या next 5 years में जो इधर जो न्यूक्लियर फ्यूजन जो थर्मो न्यूक्लियर फ्यूजन है उसकी वजह से पूरी चेंज आ जाएगी जिस तरह कोल से ऑयल में आई है और ये जो इंटरनल कंबस्टन जो वाइंड अप हुई है सारी यूरोप से ये पॉसिबल है हम इसके लिए रेडी हैं
ये न्यूक्लियर फिजिसिस्ट आपके यहाँ पे बैठे हैं लेकिन मैं आपको बस ये बता सकती हूँ कि न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी पर बहुत डिबेट है हाँ
नहीं ये
He's talking about the new fission.
About fusion.
Fusion, sorry.
Fusion,
yes.
not fission.
And I cannot answer that question, but I can tell you that a lot of people are very skeptical because of the power that gives the military over and the sort of the military industrial establishment over an economy and a society.
वो शायद हो लेकिन असल बात ये है कि 30 साल पहले हमने ये सुना था कि फ्यूजन प्लांट्स बस अभी लगने वाले हैं अब 30 साल गुजर गए और मज़ीद 30 साल शायद गुजर जाएं हाँ अभी जो हाल में आइटर में हुआ है ITER में तो उधर ऐसे कि बैलेंस प्रोड्यूस किया गया एज मच एनर्जी हैज़ बीन प्रोड्यूस एज हैज़ बीन पुट इन लेकिन जो पॉजिटिव बैलेंस है उस वो भी हो जाएगा लेकिन मसला ये कि इससे फिर एक वर्किंग न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट बनाना ये एक बहुत लंबा प्रोजेक्ट है और जब तक ये कामयाब नहीं होता हम कुछ कह नहीं सकते शायद मजीद 30 साल लग जाएं इसमें
ऐसा लग रहा है बहुत कम है क्योंकि पूरी यूरोप से इंटरनल कंबस्टन जितनी भी व्हीकल्स हैं वो वाइंड अप की वजह से शॉर्ट
ओके दो आखिरी क्वेश्चन एक साथ में
थैंक यू
दो क्वेश्चन
Sorry, 2 questions. Whenever ready. Sorry, just wanted to make a comment. I know you didn't mention AI because that's another going to be a big source for electricity consumption over the next few years. Huge source, right? Another component gets added to it. But second point, I'll just make without saying, I mean, of course, one can have their opinion about capitalism or communism, and I'm not going to get into that. But the point is that all capitalists are not the same as well. I mean, you may have Elon Musk, you may like him or not, whatever. But or you may have someone in Indonesia, a coal producer who has colluded with the government, and he's making his. So these are two capitalists, but with two very different, distinct outlooks about things. Who may be screwing his own country and people and whatever. So that's one comment. And the other comment is, I'll just make a general comment about democracy. And I mean, this is conceivable, in my opinion at least, but, well, okay, let's put it as a scenario, not even as an opinion. But whether democracy overall and is, sorry, yeah. Whether democracy is compatible with going away from profit, because if you're going to have democracy as power of, one vote each person, then no one has power. When no one has power, then the powerful have power, right? Because I mean, one person doesn't have power, then they're the powerful. So is democracy compatible with going away from capitalism? I mean, that is a question to ponder. Whereas opposed to China or somewhere else, when you have managed capitalism, I guess a solution could be maybe like some sort of a local, very local type of government that says it, that maybe. But in my opinion, democracy is not suitable with without capitalism.
Thank you for that. I would agree with most of what you've said. I mean, my understanding, historical understanding of the development of democracy is that it's very much birthed in a period in which capitalism was a dominant mode of economic and social organization. And what you said about not all capitalists being the same, I completely agree with you. So I think we're on the same page.
I was to speak sociologically, politically, and economically, but things all are set aside. I would say if you look at electricity pole and its wires in Asia and Africa, the way they are erected, it seems to be the sign of crucifixion in the Christ. And the system is controlled through the colonial mindset. Simple, मैं एक conclusive ये दूंगा कि I've worked on Save the Human Race, wrote 2 books on it, one in English and Urdu, and it's a globally driven kind of, you can say, a vision how to drive the civil society to and intellectuals to make awareness and connect it with man to man and to make them aware as to rise, particularly against corruption and ruling elites. America controls our journals, and our journals controls our politician, and our politician control our police, and our police controls our underworld. So corruption prevails everywhere. What we could say, it's depending on how the institutions will work on. I think largely depending on youth and educated, when they will come at the key post, they might resist against the corruption and make a country that we aspired and dreamed for.
Great, thank you. I think as an ending, that was our last question. That's quite a note to end on. I'm with you. I would love the youth, the educated, and the uneducated to together, launch a movement. I think the challenge we have is when we launch a movement, forget about the logistics of organizing a movement, but, well, if things are ready, that's great. But what do we want to build? That's still a question that I don't think we've answered. So more power to you figuring that out. Thank you. Well, we have to find out. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.